Welcome everybody to this session. Today's topic for the session is Unmasking the Reality of Urban Lives. Shreya, who's one of our panelists, will be taking us through the topic in detail after I introduce everybody. So I'll go ahead and introduce everybody now, starting with Jacinta. Having worked for 25 years with companies such as HP, Infosys, OnMobile, Jacinta has led teams in defining best-in-class talent management practices over the past 10 years. She has also co-founded two companies, Transcendix, a training and development organization, and Lead Now, an organization enabling women to start and stay and soar in their careers by providing research-based solutions. Jacinta has inspired over 40,000 participants in various learning and coaching engagements across organizations, domains, and geographies. Welcome, Jacinta.
Thank you.
We have Venkat. He is the managing trustee of a registered public charitable trust that works on various issues in the slums of Koramangala, Bangalore, arguably one of the largest slums. The trust manages schools, charity clinics, a large interest-free lending programs, and education scholarship that supports more than 200 bright school and college-going students each year, and other women in programs such as cloth bag stitching, etc. Venkat also holds working experience of 16 years in the Middle East. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Aishwarya.
We have Sunil. Sunil, who is a senior vice president and India head at Enquero, a software and services company headquartered in the US. He has nurtured an open, inclusive culture where the brightest technology minds thrive, working on innovative digital technologies. Prior to leading Enquero India, Sunil worked with Infosys for 18 years, handling various leadership responsibilities. With over 22 years in the information technology industry, Sunil has a vast experience in IT consulting, building large teams, organization development, strategy realization, and community collaboration. Welcome, Sunil.
Thanks, Aishwarya.
Last but not the least, we have Shreya, who's also going to be our mediator for the evening. Shreya is a senior vice president, marketing and communication at Anviti Insurance Brokers, CSR specialist, and a corporate grooming consultant. She is on the advisory board of 4 organizations and 4 NGOs. That's just one facet of who she is. This former corporate diva and Mrs. India Universe 2017 also dabbles in activism, dance, theater, poetry, blogging, modeling, and acting. She considers herself an earth warrior and is an event anchor and trainer. Welcome, Shreya, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Aishwarya. I think as we have more people joining in, let me start with saying the last 6 months is a reality. We don't need to rehash what everybody's been going through. But what I think I have the privilege today and honor today of doing is to speak with 3 individuals who have taken and made this opportunity into something far larger than themselves. Community change is not something you can do single-handedly, or that's the myth that exists that they are going to debunk today. You know, privilege often pushes you to a blind spot that makes the obvious often stay hidden. We saw what happened with the migrant lives that happened within our own country. We saw what happened with the Black Lives Matter campaign that went on, that spoke about the issues that the world is trying to deal with and dabble with. But of course, it's important to remember that understanding the lives of our community and understanding what can be done is something that all 3 of these individuals have actually managed to do in the course of the pandemic. So I'm going to start, Jassi, I'm going to start with you, and I'm going to ask you to open and give us your opening notes, and then I'll come to you, Venkat, and then to you, Sunil, and then we'll swap this around for the next round.
Thanks, Shreya, and it's an absolute honor to be here, but even bigger honor, I think, to be in the same frame along with Venkat. I genuinely think he's an inspiration. And of course, Sunil, who to me represents the best of what I have seen in the corporate world. And Sunil and I go a long way back, from INFI to where we are today. And Shreya, of course, I don't even have to say because then it will take the entire 1 hour that we have here. So as part of my opening remarks for today, one of my friends always says, every interaction is an opportunity. And for me, this is not just about an interaction, it's beyond that. But COVID, to a large extent, was an unplanned, unintended event which got turned into an opportunity by people who I thought were willing to collaborate, to move from the space of mind-numbing fear to really saying, how do I respond with humanity to what was emerging in front of us, at the same time, looking all around us and saying, how do I do this by also being safe? And I think that was really the challenge. How do you remain safe and yet serve communities which were struggling at this point in time? Now, I really felt this was such a big question. And I know Venkat and I shared this massive distribution effort in grocery distribution for many families, not just the migrant communities. And, Venkat has worked in very large communities of financially under-resourced. I realized we had to battle the fear every day. So in my opening remarks, the first thing that I want to say is, sometimes I felt common sense was overrated, but to play safe, we always had to rely on common sense. And so we did our masks, we did our gloves, we did all of those things. Yet there was one rule we broke, which was work together. I know amongst the 60 volunteers we had working across shifts in a makeshift Kalyan Mandap that we hired, and Kalyan Mandap is really a wedding chowdhury in India. We really had a bunch of people, in the age range of 7 to almost 70 plus, coming together with one intention, to be able to contribute their bit. So to me, it was really the bit about coming together of humanity to respond to what was really becoming a crisis which was unimaginable, while dealing with a crisis of your own survival. To me, I don't think the human race has shown greater propensity to be human, now rather than any other time that I have seen. The last bit is really in my own space of work, where we worked with girls and 500 of them. Venkat always calls that he's a daughter of, if I'm right, 15 daughters. 16. Okay, Venkat, I beat you to the number and I'm going to give you a line. I claim to be the mother of 550 daughters, and I have been working with them from last year. And I can tell you, it's astounding when these kids embrace technology with the meager resources they have, reach out to you, not just for asking for help, but to share their presence on this earth. So I must share something that one of the young kids sent to me last week. She said, I miss the school, I miss the lessons, but above all, I miss your hugs. So I think in so many ways, this world has taught us how to live away, but it's also nudging us and pushing us to believe that each one of us is playing such an important role in reimagining the world more beautiful and enabling those who need us to be there as human beings more than anything else. I think to me, those were the two significant learnings, takeaways as we battled through COVID. With that, I hand it back to you, Shreya.
Thank you, Jessie. I think that she's not the only one missing your hugs for sure. Venkat, I'm going to pass the baton over to you and ask you to share your thoughts and kickstart this conversation.
Yes, so thanks Aishwarya and thanks Shreya. Jessie, what a wonderful introduction to the program. So the last 6 months have been extraordinary. The world hasn't seen, heard, not much less experienced any challenge like this. So a response to an unprecedented challenge like this, say a governmental response, can only be by most of us considered to be wanting. But today, I will not get into the discussion of whether the government did enough or not, whether much more could have been done. I will largely focus on the misery and the pain that an entire nation experienced for the last 6 months. And we are a nation of 1.3 billion people. Friends, all of you must have watched on TV and social media the kind of misery when a sea of humanity moved from the cities to the villages. Thousands, millions actually moved from cities to their hometowns, sometimes on foot or mostly on foot, 1,000 and 2,000 miles. We saw people dying on the way. We saw children and mothers hungry. And then there were road accidents, extremely unbearable scenes to watch. I'm sure a lot of you must have watched and cried too. Like Jesse said, the better part of the whole thing was the civil society in India rose to the challenge. During those times when the migration was happening, a large number of philanthropies, individuals and corporates like Sunil's, they rose to the challenge. They opened their pockets up, they opened their hearts up to charities like us to reach out to the poor. So a lot of the migrants who moved out of Bangalore were helped with food in transit. A lot of them were given shelter by charities, and in many instances, tickets bought for them to reach their hometown. So between the month of April and May, the sea of humanity that moved from the cities, which can be only compared to what happened in 1947 in India, actually settled down by the end of May. A bulk of the migrants had moved. But what the media and the TV did not show us was the lock-in that happened to the urban poor in India during the same 3 months. This unprecedented sudden lockdown without a warning made sure that the poor people who live in the slums. So I work in a fairly large slum called Rajendra Nagara, which is home to about 15,000 families, largely daily wage laborers. So a 15,000 family essentially translates into 100,000 people in a very small concentrated area. Now, these are daily wage laborers. By definition, they go out and work, earn for the day, and just are able to feed their families for the day. When the lockdown happened so suddenly, none of them were absolutely prepared. Imagine a situation where a poor family with absolutely no savings has to stay inside their homes, not being able to go out and work and earn for themselves. That was extremely shocking for them. So during these times, what we saw in the community in the last 3 or 4 months is that the major issues, of course, people suffered, there was misery, there was pain, there was hunger and all that. But the bigger and the long lasting challenges that I experienced was thousands of children in the slums of Koramangala missed out on schooling. Schools have remained closed from the month of May all the way till September. It also looks like this entire year is going to be a washout. Unlike in high-end schools, the poor slum schools do not get the facility of an online education possibility. So children have stayed away from school and have lost an education. They will lose an education for this entire year because their parents are illiterate and they have very little backup support from home. The children, my belief is, would also have forgotten all that was taught to them last year. So we are essentially, the pandemic has put the entire slum population, slum children population back by at least 2 years. What we also see and experience now is that a large number of parents now come to us and say that we can never get our children back into schools by paying 15 and 20,000 rupees as fees. We would rather pull children out of schools and get them into workforce. So that kind of damage that the pandemic has caused is simply unquantifiable. It's impossible to quantify the loss that the country has incurred because of the pandemic. More importantly, we also see a large number of senior citizens who are, say, chronic sickness patients, their sugar cases and blood pressure cases. They have not had medicines for the last 3 to 4 months. Their children who would have generally bought them medicines can't afford to buy them medicines anymore. So there are people who are actually living with sicknesses without having had medicines. This again is an irreparable damage that's happening to the senior citizens in the community. So as all this is happening and the lockdown opened up after 3 or 4 months, I saw that the jobs were not coming back. The poor families who would now want to go out and work have very little opportunities. There are jobs available for 1 or 2 days in a week right now. An average auto driver who used to earn 600 to 700 rupees a month is now earning 50 rupees a day. the handcart pushers, the vegetable vendors, the fruit vendors, the trinket jewelry seller, chai walas, all their businesses have completely shut down. And in the slums, when a small business shuts down, it's extremely difficult for them to bring back capital in and re-establish businesses. So things are extremely difficult. But my fear also is that when frustration sets in, all kinds of wrong things can happen. The Bangalore police will tell you that the crime rate in Bangalore has dramatically gone up. The mobile snatching, the chain snatching has exponentially gone up. And you can pin it all down to the fact that there is very, very little employment in the community. A little later in the panel discussion, we must also discuss solutions, but these are my opening comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Venkat. I think that sort of opens up your eyes to when I spoke about privilege, about what we don't even see. There's so much of what we ignore, not because we want to ignore it, but because we don't know it exists. And thank you for opening up our eyes to that. Sunil, I'm going to bring you in at this juncture, and then I'm going to ask you about, your opening comments and what you have to say in these times.
Thank you, Shreya. And again, it's an honor to be in the panel with Jacinta and Venkat, who are doing so much in this field. It's just amazing to hear their stories. I'll be more years than speaking today, I guess. But opening, I should say, where I come from, you can see Enpero is a company I head in India. Just to set a little bit of a context, we are a young company, just 6 years old, actually only 4 years old in India, and we just started, so to speak, in a corporate life cycle. And good fortunes, we're doing well, but we grew to about 500 people. But we never thought at the beginning of 2020 that we will be here towards the end of 2020, that it almost shook the confidence of a lot of small companies and startups. A lot of them in 2020 started thinking big dreams and goals, and right now a lot of them are struggling to stay afloat. Okay, fortunately we are in a slightly better position, we didn't have to go through that struggle. However, the what started unfolding at the beginning of the year was two things that as a company we had to think about. One is, are we going to survive all this? Are we going to thrive? And how are we going to do as a business? Second thing is, how about the people? Even if your business is still doing well, what happens to all your people? And your people start with your employees, goes to the staff that supports you. They may not be we are a software company, so largely people are software engineers. They're not the underprivileged, they're privileged. And they're actually privileged because they can continue working from home or hometowns or wherever they are. So that way we're all very privileged. But then there's a whole lot of support staff that works with us. So we had to think about them, office boys and those people. And then as a company, right from the beginning, we wanted to build a culture where we are relevant in the society, we give back to the society, we are benefiting from these communities, we have to take care of the communities. And when this struck, well, I think it was the problem with the mind share. Do you think about business? Do you think about the community around you? And the uncertainty, I think, was the most difficult part. And in all this, I had the good fortune of having Jacinta as an advisor for us. She really helped us to do a little bit that we could do right at the beginning of this whole migrant worker crisis. And I'll tell you a little more in detail. Jacinta will share more later how we could actually chip in with a little bit of help from a corporate, if you can call us that, to set up some medical camps, mobile medical camps in the urban slums as well as a few villages around Bangalore. That really helped us to give something back to the society. But of course, it's a journey, it's a long one. And I think as a small company, the realization was that you don't have to be a large company. I worked with Infosys for 18 years, and the Infosys Foundation is known to do wonders for the society. So while we've seen that, thinking with small companies is, oh, well, let me take care of my business first, let me stay afloat first, we'll do something later. But I think all of us can pitch in with something, whatever we can afford right from the beginning. And there are ways, of course, we'll talk about how small companies can possibly pool in the efforts to do something big. So we'll talk more about it, but those are my opening comments.
Thank you so much, Sunil. I think you brought up a very interesting point, which I'll come to in a little bit. But you spoke about mind share, and you spoke about what you think of. But there is a Ban Ki-moon quote which is beautiful, which says all issues are connected. So it reminded me of that when you said when you solve for one, somehow the other seems to also have a solution connected to it. So I'm going to now open up, and Venkat, I'm going to come to you first, and I'm going to ask you the first question. What can be done as a person, as a member of the society, and as a citizen of the country, and as an organization? You all spoke about it, but I'm going to come to specifics and say what can be done.
So a lot can be done, but one of the things that needs to be done fairly urgently is to create hope in people. I think very quickly despair is setting in. Despair, a little bit of desperation is all setting in. So by reaching out to people physically and making sure that they are fed, they are clothed, their medical needs are taken care of, it gives you an opportunity to reach out to them and tell them that do not worry, things will get better. You just have to wait and bear through it. So the most important thing right now is to give them hope, because hope is very quickly going out. The country has seen 6 months of pandemic and things are not getting any better. Bangalore, I'm told yesterday, has 4,000 odd cases. Karnataka had 10,000 cases yesterday. The problem with employment is another challenge. We need to skill people to make sure that they are employable in the current situation, but that's a long-term challenge. The immediate challenge, of course, is to make sure that children get into schools, people are nourished, mothers have milk for their children, senior citizens have medicines, but above all, make sure that they believe that things are not going to last forever and things will get better soon.
Right. Sunil, I'll bring you in here, and Jesse, I'll come to you next. You spoke about it, but again, in context of what can be done as a person, as a part of society, as an organization.
Yeah. So I think as organizations, I'm sure all organizations want to do something, but I guess many of them do not know how to go about and do what to do. I mean, giving away money is possibly the easy part. Most organizations would have some money to spare, but then what, right? So finding a good channel to channelize your money as well as your efforts. If you think about it today, the millennial workforce, they're not happy just giving away money. They want to be involved. They want meaning at their workplace. They want to be associated with an employer who gives them purpose. So a company which stands for a purpose, and that is something that is no more a choice for corporates, big or small. We need to do it, and people want to help. So we have to find ways, facilitate, work with organizations like Venkat's and Jacinta's who can help us channelize our funding as well as our efforts to go and actually help those in need. So, for example, for Enquero, we have set up our flagship CSR program as Education for the Girl Child, and that will be our ongoing initiative. And while we respond to these hopefully short-term events like COVID, um, but long-term, we have said we will focus on the girl child, education for the girl child. And with Jacinta's help, we are actually identifying a couple of schools where underprivileged girls go, and we can actually help them with their education. We could contribute to them, of course, a little bit of funding, but more importantly, our employees can go and teach them. And I think those are the kind of things that really excites us, motivates us. And like we said, Enquero cares, and that is not just a poster there. That's something all of us want to feel about, and have our employees participate in that.
The smile that lit up your eyes when you said Enquero cares totally, and the logo behind you that we can see. Jesse, I'm going to bring you in here, and I'm going to ask you, yes, we heard from Venkat as a social organization working on social impact. We heard from Sunil as part of being a larger organization in context of where it stands as a for-profit, what they can do. Let's hear from you from the context of individuals and what they can do, because when I hear of Venkat's work, when I hear of your work, I'm swept away by the impact that one individual's intent can spark. And, Sunil's an example of that. I am an example of that. So tell us, Jesse, a little bit about what this is.
So one of the things that I must admit when I come here and speak is that when you have worked for 25 years, you have a fairly large network. So even if you're an individual, you are surrounded by your network. And I'd love to believe the universe is open for those who are willing to reach into this network. So for me, if you're an individual, first thing you need to figure out is how large a network you have built, right? And I don't mean it in this manner of, are you networking enough? But I'm really saying, do you have friends of friends of friends of friends to whom you can go and be absolutely unabashed in talking about your needs and being able to represent the cause that you really want to speak? So let's step back a little. I straddle both, right? I straddle the social impact space. Those started nascently. I've been there for a very, very long time. I also straddle the corporate space. And, I've been associated with Enquero for 1 year. And, I run my own company, though not directly right now by handing it over. But when I look at all of these things, what I could leverage in a humanitarian crisis was really be a bridge between these two. I remember calling Venkat one night. I had got his number from a friend saying, Venkat, I know you, I've met you just once in Biocon, and I know you do work. So tell me, in which community are you working? Can we collaborate? And so that we create a larger impact. And then Venkat brought in one more person. So we had a consortium of 3 social impact teams coming together in order to go forward and ask people to support us in this mission. Individually, even as organizations, I don't think we could have accomplished the scale of what we managed to accomplish. It was the idea of coming together and becoming a collaborative and a collective that was going out there to serve a cause. At the same time, I looked at Sunil and Enquero. Sunil and the team always tells me about the fact that this is a small young company, and this is the way I define it for anyone whom I meet: a small company in size, large in heart, young in age, and extremely evolved in terms of its leadership and footprint. I truly believe that. I have, and I have consulted with tons of companies, and to meet with a leadership team that is ready to listen and say, how do I contribute to this? It took me, I think, one text message late in the night to Sunil to say, hey, I think this is a worthy cause where we go back and address the health needs. Venkat and I were working towards the nutritional needs, the food supply part of it. At the same time, when I went into the communities that we work, I realized there were 3 struggle areas. Health, which meant food, first of all. The second was medical care. Everyone was scared. Shreya, they live in floors on which you and I wouldn't walk. Forget about sleep. There really are no washrooms. 8 or 10 men, full grown adult male, is being packed like sardines into those little tin sheet tenements. I don't know how many gaj ki duri we are talking about, and I can tell you, you have no idea of what this living condition is. In all of this, forget about not breathing air. You're breathing fear because you're cut off, right? So the next element I realized that they need is a human connect, because connecting back home itself was difficult. Most of them in the first 10 days had run out of their mobile charge, and they had no money to charge their mobiles. They had no idea how to reach out to their families, and they knew no one in the cities. Let me take a few minutes from this panel and share this story. I meet this guy called Asbab Sayer, and he landed in Bangalore on the day the lockdown was announced. He was brought in by a coordinator, dumped in a railway station, and another coordinator picked him up from there, brought him to Koramangala ST bed and dumped him there, and then disappeared, never to come back. And later in the evening, he heard the country was going into a lockdown. There was no employment. He had no money. he's taken about 4 lakh loan in order to get his sister married off, and he felt coming from Bihar to Bangalore as a worker in a construction site will give him the wherewithal to go back with some monies. And he says, my mother and sister really need this from me. And here he was, he had no idea of which part of Bangalore he was. He had nobody to call a friend other than the 5 to 10 guys with whom he had to share a tenement. Suddenly, it was not like all of them came together. They were all bought from various places in India and dumped into this place. So I asked him, Bhaiya, wo supervisor kidhar hai? He said, Madam ji, phone switched off hai. So he had no clue. And the construction site, which was supposed to pick their, up as the labor community, wasn't there. So for the first 10 days, believe me, a community that had come from north, UP, Bihar, had to survive on our bisibele bath and everything else. That itself, I thought, wasn't doing justice to them, but some food inside their stomach. And here I'm talking, why am I giving you the specific story? That is a single story. I can tell you there were hundreds and thousands like that, not just in this city, but across the cities in India. What this particular pandemic did for us was, as individuals, I think in some ways we were isolated from this. The pandemic locked us in, but it brought to center stage and therefore shook the conscience of many, many people, not just who were involved as civil society. And I think, therefore, to me, our work with, Venkat was beautifully doing even before COVID, and then continues to do. And what I started to do added that much more meaning, because there were just people coming from all walks of life and telling, I will be here. And these individuals are people who had nothing to get from this other than the fact that they felt it was their duty to contribute. I remember 3 old gentlemen, I think in their 60s or 70s, coming one evening when Venkat and I would always give a small break from packing with 2 bags of grapes for us. And the 3 gentlemen said, we've seen you guys working so hard, virtually like 15 hours a day. All that we could do was get you these grapes. And one of the gentlemen very patiently explains to me, saying, Madam, saltwater washed grapes, huh? So don't worry, I'm sure there is no COVID. And every time you think back at those comments, those moments, those interactions, I tell you, we responded as individuals, but we came together as a, and to me, that shall remain the greatest learning. Whether you're corporate, whether you're civil society, or just an old man who missed walking in the evening and chose to walk into the Kalyan Mandap to give us fruits because he had to escape from his house, even if it was for just 15 minutes.
Thank you, Jessie. Wonderful is the word, because you actually answered my second question, which was, I wanted to ask each one of you for a personal story or an anecdote of what you went through this process. So Jessie, you answered 2 of my questions in a short. Thank you. Sunil, I'll come to you now, and I'll ask you to tell us one of these stories that that touched you, or that you want to talk about, and then Venkat, I'll come to you.
Sure. Okay, there were quite a few. Let me think of a story which might be resonating well. For example, we have these few office boys who work in our office. They are, frankly, I don't even know where they live. Actually, that's a shame, but I don't know where they live. But I realize they do live in one of these very small settlements somewhere in the city close by. Now I know where they live, but I did not then. And then imagine the fear in their minds when this happened, when this all started. People were, there were curfews, no one could go anywhere. The worst thing that could happen to them was, we say, okay, cost cutting. We don't know if there's uncertainty. The first thing to do is that, okay, let's cut cost. Offices are closed. Nobody's coming to office. And the obvious thing would be to do cost cutting, right? But I guess a lot of companies, including us, took the stand that we will not lose jobs, especially for these kind of employees, people who are dependent on these jobs for for a day-to-day living. While they're not daily laborers, they're not the poorest of the poor, but still they're very much dependent on these the salaries they get from here. So we decided, just like many other corporates did, that they will continue to work. Even to date, the last 6 months, they come to work every single day. Once in a while, I go visit them in office. They're so happy to see humans walking into office, because these guys are in office every day. They're cleaning it, they're keeping it sanitized, but they're just so happy to see that we go there and we appreciate what they do. And they're just so happy that there is a workplace for them to come to every day. And that's possibly a good place to be in for them the whole day. It's a sanitized, a good place to spend their day as well. So that's a story which I thought really shows that there are people all around you. If you want to do a little bit, you don't have to look very far. And there are so many stories like that. I mean, we have a gardener there was this car wash, right? In Bangalore, it's quite common for people to have somebody come wash your car. You're not using your cars anymore. Why do you need a car wash? But then the most logical thing to do was let them continue to do what they're doing. So the guy has a job to do. He comes every other morning, washes the car with the same intensity, maybe more now, and he gets that little money that keeps him going. So those are things that happen all around us, which I think a lot of people supported a lot of such workers through this pandemic. That was very nice to see.
Very
Yeah. Yes, Venkat, I'll bring you in here, and I would love to hear a personal story from these times from you as well.
So, like Jesse said and Sunil said, there are lots and lots of stories, but the one that touched me most was taking it forward from what Jesse said. The community that I work in is extremely large. 15,000 families is a huge community, 100,000 people. So when the pandemic hit and people could not come out and make their own living, we had to reach groceries to their homes. But 15,000 homes to reach groceries is a massive exercise. One thing is to raise that kind of funds, but luckily funds were available, Jesse, if you remember those times. People were willing to give us money. So we decided to reach the groceries home. But do you know what kind of a volunteer base that you require to reach home so many grocery kits? The packing itself is a massive exercise. So in the slum, like what we did in the Mangala Kalyana Mantapa, we had a team from the community, people that I never knew. These were housewives, these were young people, these were women, children, they all came together, and there was always this fear of corona. And unlike in the Kalyana Mantapa, the slum doesn't have that kind of space. They all got themselves into a room and started bringing the groceries in, packing, giving out. So we had a team that went around giving tokens to each of the homes. Then there was another team that distributed the groceries and collected the token. And I realized at the end of the 2 months that this worked like a precision clockwork. None of them were trained. None of them had any professional experience. It is just that they had the heart to reach out to their own neighbors. That was an amazing experience for me. That team at the end of 2 months dispersed, but that was a very, very sad day. Because when they finally dispersed and they wanted to carry on with their own lives, I realized that the family had unfortunately disconnected all of a sudden. That was a beautiful story. There are many, many more. I remember mothers running after us to pack, snatch a packet of milk, so on and so forth. But this was an extraordinary story. 100 people got together that 2 months.
Jesse knows this. When we were locked down, I was locked down in Coorg, and we had about 100 of the spaces workers with us. And I remember how much of anxiety they were in, not that they were addressing it, not that they were talking about it, but you can see it in the body language, you can see it in the eyes. And when you hear of things, of people coming together to actually help ease that burden of whether it's that one meal that they're worrying about or that one phone recharge that they want to get done to talk to their loved ones, I think that talks about community coming together to help and to actually, garner what we can to get them all going. Now I'll come to the next thing, and Jesse, I'll start with you here again. I know that this was not easy. I know some of the real stories because I've spoken to you through this. what were some of the most complex challenges that had to be tackled within course of getting things done? And you can talk about, I think, one of two of those episodes where people wanted to, I'm hoping I'm nudging you in the direction of sharing that little story that you had told us. I want to hear that from you.
I don't know what is that because I've told you so many stories, but nevertheless, I think what we had to battle first was personal fear. I think I think it was so huge. It was writ large on our faces, and we were bringing people from all walks of life to come and to work together. And you were in some ways, right, nudging this group to come together. So Venkat and I think, agonized over whether we were taking enough precautions, whether we were doing this right. You wanted it to be safe. And I know for Venkat, it was a very tough time because he had to run back home. He has an elderly mother-in-law. So he had quarantined himself in his room for, I don't know how long. And I don't think he ever got to see his wife, Viji. And it was very similar for me because I have three elders to support. And the fear that you're probably bringing something that could pose a huge risk to them was one of the first nightmares you had to battle. But you wished and hoped and prayed and moved on. So I think that to me was really the first element that you had to battle. The second was many people who gave, in some ways wanted some proof that this was going to the right set of people, right? So some of them would ask us, can you send us pictures? And I always felt this was like creating a portrait of poverty. Who wants to be seen helpless, being taken like and somebody hands them a bag of groceries and then there's a picture over there. And I actually went out and negotiated with many of our donors. And I said, I don't think we're going to do the pictures. I need you to trust us that we're giving it to the right set of people who have the need. And there is desperate need. No matter how much we give, I don't think it's going to really suffice. So I think that was really the second part. The third element was the ability of people to respond with what I would call absolute corporate class leadership. Asbab I talk about would say, ma'am, aap risk mat lo, yahan pe mat khade raho. Just bring the food, give it to me in bags. I will go and distribute it. You don't have to stand here for 1 hour and get exposed. And then he looks at me and says, Najane, aapke paas bhi infection hoga. And you're like, you're right, dude. I could also be bringing the infection here. But what I liked about him, I spoke to him like yesterday. One day we sat down to talk and he said, I'd like to do something for you. I said, okay. And he said, main gana gaun? I said, okay.
Oh.
So makes us sit inside the car, stands about 6 feet away and sings this amazing song that he's penned by himself. And I really thought that was the best give back. So you know what? You could be hungry, you could be abandoned, you could be called a migrant or a guest worker, but you have an identity. So the way Asbab introduces himself is, मैं शायर हूँ, लेकिन यहाँ पे construction का काम करता हूँ. And I think that to me is the definitive story of COVID. Each one of us has an identity. Maybe you're a poet, maybe you're a singer, maybe you're just a grand human being. The work that you do doesn't really define you. So to me, those will remain, I think, very, very deep and beautiful moments that really took me along this journey. And the fact that we all survived, we came and we are still going strong, I think is a great place to be.
Wow. Okay, so thank you, Jessie. I mean, I remember once my mother referred to Jessie as a force of nature, and I think to everybody listening in, it's obvious why she would be called that. Yeah. So, Sunil, I'm going to come to you, and I'm going to flip this a little bit and ask you about what the challenges were as an organization when it came to channeling all of the energies. While the intent is there are also impediments on the way. So tell us a little bit about the challenges that you faced, and Venkat, then I'll come to you.
Sure. So actually, we were fortunate to have Jacinta. Like I said before, it was not very challenging for us to help the way we wanted to help. So it was the main problem, like I said earlier, is you don't know how to help. You want to help, but you don't know how to help. But you're having somebody who can advise, who can say, who can take care of getting it done really helped. So that way it wasn't very challenging. But what was challenging as a corporate for us is we never thought our employees were migrant workers. Okay. So the fact is, even whether you are a laborer or a software engineer, if you are not in your hometown and something like this strikes, it affects you mentally. And we realized there are so many of our own employees who did not have the risk of losing a job, did not have the security issue. They had homes in Bangalore, they had homes, they owned homes in Bangalore. Many of them were in a rush to get back to their hometowns. Even when there were no flights, there were no trains. I know two of them who took the Shramik trains to get back to their hometowns. It was not meant for them, but they still did. Such was the desperation. That kind of a desperation, it really troubled us to think, where is this going? If it can disturb well off people like this and who just want to mentally be peaceful, taking all the risk just to get back to their hometowns, what might be happening to the people who are not so fortunate? Right? It
Very
was
true.
really, really disturbing. And in the end, it worked out all right. But that first 2 3 months, where we saw hundreds of employees just trying to flee from Bangalore and from Hyderabad, it was scary. And I tried everything I could to reassure them to stay put in Bangalore. We do this daily task force meetings, we do this communications. But I think the emotions were too high. So we couldn't force anybody to stay here, but we appealed.
That's true, but I think one of the things that this pandemic did was put the fear of death in the right in the center. Because I know I heard of so many people saying, "I don't care. We'll figure out. We may not have money, but if we die together. If we starve together." And I think, again, it only reminds you of how fragile we are as a planet and as its people. Venkat, I'll come to you now and ask you to share. What you have to say in this context.
So challenges, there were many, but because in some way I feel morally responsible for the community that I work in. I have been in Rajendranagar slums for the last 16 or 17 years because we engage with children, senior citizens, we run clinics, schools and all that. It's my family. So I always thought that among all the slums in Bangalore, Rajendranagar should remain the safest. That was a huge challenge because it's a very, very crowded, densely populated community. And through the first 2 or 3 months, as long as the lockdown was on, there is some amount of discipline. People stayed home. But the moment the lockdown was withdrawn, people were all over the place. And it was extremely difficult for us to tell them as to how risky it was for them to be out in the open, sharing shoulders with each other, having cups of tea at the street corners. So at that point in time, we decided to create a task force of about 25 college-going youth in the community. So we run a youth empowerment program where every Sunday all the youth come in and we train them on soft skills. So we put the team together, and in the next 2 months, we made sure that they went door to door with megaphones, two per lane with a megaphone, speaking to people over the megaphone as to how important it was for them to stay home, sanitize themselves, socially distance themselves, not let the senior citizens come out, not let the children be unsafe, so on and so forth. But finally, after those 2 months, we realized that there were very, very few cases in Rajendranagar. So the challenge was huge, but the team and the community came, up to the challenge and we succeeded. That was my biggest challenge. Luckily, it was not insurmountable. We managed to keep the community safe. It continues to be relatively safer than all other slums in Bangalore.
I know I'm conscious of time and we're 5 minutes from where we should be ending. So I'm quickly going to ask you the last two questions in a slightly rapid fire sort of format and then ask you a few more in the same way. So I'm going to ask you to keep your answers as crisp as you can.
We let the lady win.
There is no coffee hamper on this one though. So my question, Jesse, to you, and then same question to Sunil and Venkat is, what can one do? What can we do as individuals? What can we do?
Share hope.
Yeah, share hope. And, I just want to quote what we shared today. Bernard Williams says, there never was a night or a problem that could defeat sunrise or hope. So I believe as human beings, we we need to continue to thrive, but we need to continue to believe that we survive together rather than alone. And I think that to me is the biggest learning.
Yeah, both of you were in chorus when it came to hope. So Venkat, switching to you.
So I believe that hope is the only way forward because there is despondency right now. We must make sure that every single person in the community believes that there is a better tomorrow. And that is possible only if you show them the hope. And I think people now have started to believe that things can get better because in the last 6 months, the most difficult part of the last 6 months, they have been able to tide over. So hope, I think, is the only way forward. You can give them enough groceries, you can give them enough food and all that, but that is just for the moment. Hope is what will last and last long enough for them to survive for another good day.
Well, the magic words, hope. Sunil, let's hear from you.
Okay, maybe I'll try something different. But charity begins at home. So I think we all should look around the people who help us. Let's help them. And as hopeless as it may sound, this may not be the last pandemic or the last crisis we are going to see. Right? There may be more in future, worse ones. So let's learn from this and be better prepared for the next one.
Wow, nice. So my last question, and I'm going to ask audience to start posting questions very quickly on the Q&A window. My last question is, what is the silver lining?
So you're asking whom?
I'm asking all of you, and Venkat, we'll start with you.
Okay, the silver lining is a fact that we as Indians have quite better immunity than most of the people in the world. So luckily, in a country of 1.3 billion, the deaths have been very few. And that makes us believe that probably we'll come out of it much faster than many of the other countries. That's the silver lining for me.
Jessie?
Silver lining to me is that humanity is still thriving. I don't know what the rest of the world has in terms of judgment. To me, it is thriving. Look at the way an unknown corporate came with a hospital to go to Bangalore rural, a village called Mugalur, and give healthcare. Look at what Venkat, who lives in Koramangala, goes into a community of 100,000 people and can proudly today say, we don't have too many cases because we did everything that we could. To me, humanity has thrived and it will continue to thrive, and that's the silver lining.
And Sunil?
Silver lining is we are winning the war against COVID, no doubt about it. And I think the vaccines are coming way faster than any time in the past. So these are all great things.
I think my silver lining was the fact that I got to chat with three of you who I think have moved the needle so much in context of what individuals can do. And thank you so much, Sunil, Jacinta, and Venkat, and thank you to Kocharya for having us here in this conversation. There is a comment from somebody, there is no question, which I should read out, and it says, authentic conversations with hope and humanity. Kudos, Venkat, Jacinta, and Sunil. So there you go. Signing off from my silver angle and silver lining and handing it over to Aishwarya. Thank you so much for having all of us, and thank you, Jessie, Venkat, and Sunil.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shreya.
This was brilliant, and I think it was required in these times, I believe. Thank you everybody for taking out the time and sharing your thoughts and views and experiences and making this a great evening and a great session. I believe there aren't any questions. Yes, there aren't any questions. So then, good night to everybody. Thank you for taking out the time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks all of you. God bless all of you. Thank you so much. Jacinta and Sunil, Shreya and Aishwarya, wonderful having spent some time with you.
Thank you.
Sometimes
Thank you.
Done.
Thanks, Venkat.
Sunil, we will catch up. Done.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
See you. Bye.
Bye.